Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to Apply. All right, today I have Keith Blanchard on the line. He's president and CEO over at Boys and Girls Club of Greater Memphis. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I'm excited. When I saw Boys and Girls Club, we were having somebody from that organization come on, I got excited. I grew up with one of those across the street from me, and I can't tell you. I probably spent my whole childhood over there playing on the baseball field and also basketball. I mean, name it. So I love the organization, big fan. And I want to go into it and specifically some of the unique things that you're doing over at the Memphis area, specifically the importance of youth development and career exploration. So we'll get into that. But before we do, I want to go further into your background. So I mean, you're an artist living in Brazil. Then, I mean, you have a unique story that really gets you to where you're at now at Boys and Girls Club. So share some of that with us, please.
Sure, I'd love to. Well, back a long time ago, I was dating a young lady that was from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and we dated for about a year. Ultimately, we ended up getting married. About a year and a half later, our first child was born, Monique, and then a couple of years later, we decided to move to Brazil. So we moved down there, lived in Rio for almost 10 years. I did a little bit of everything to survive and get by. Taught tennis lessons, opened an art gallery, and that's what I did, the majority of the time I was down there. But I also started working with some young men that I had met at the tennis club where I played, and I really was impressed with both of them and how hard they worked and how determined they were to succeed. And I told them at one point, if you learned English, you could probably even go farther and eventually become pros yourself and teach. And so they used to ride clear across town on Friday and Saturday night to study English with me, and then we played tennis during the week. And long story short, one of them ended up going to Switzerland for a while and now is back in Brazil. The other one moved to another city inside of Brazil, but they're both head pros at two different academies. And one of them has actually done TV commentary for a local station in Rio, with tennis. So that was kind of my first time to really work with young people. A few years later, I moved back to the United States, and it was a kind of an unusual journey but I'll skip part of that, but it ended up being a police officer, which was kind of a long-term goal of mine. Ended up in California and was a police officer for 7 years. And I really enjoyed it. I appreciated the opportunity, and I'd been there about a year, and my chief came along and said, we have a program called Police Activities League PAL, and we'd like you to run that for our department. So I did that for what I thought was going to be a one-year assignment. Ended up being almost 5.5, 6 years in that position. And I really began to see the impact that I could have on young people, positive impact. And I just kept arresting the same people over and over again, and they all had certain things in common. But the one thing that I always saw was if they had an adult role model or a job or somebody could help them navigate through that process, that it would be it made a difference. So I continued to. At one point, my chief in Salinas asked me to look into building a facility because we didn't really have our own facility. We were in schools, and I ended up partnering with the Boys and Girls Club in California, and together we built a state-of-the-art, really nice, beautiful facility. In fact, Clint Eastwood was our spokesperson to help raise the money, which was really cool. And at the end of my time there, I had to make a decision. I went through 3 different chiefs of police while I was there. I was either going to have to go back on patrol or I could transition and do something else. And so I decided I had an opportunity to move to Florida to work with the Boys and Girls Club there, and I took it, and I was there 13 years. So that was how I got into this in the first place, and it was kind of a long, convoluted way, but a really good decision that I made.
Wow, what an amazing career, and what a great story, and how it came about. Let's get into your club and into what you're doing in the greater Memphis area, because I think it's pretty unique in general. So when people think of, and by the way, I'm familiar with Pal League. I mean, I grew up playing all these things. So you're taking me back to my childhood, Keith. I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. And so what you're doing specifically in the greater Memphis area on youth development and career exploration. I mean, tell us a little bit more about the vision for that and how you're executing.
Yeah, well, when I was in Florida, it was a great organization, but much smaller than here, and it really had a focus on athletics, which I have nothing against. I played sports my whole life, but I always felt like that really, there's an expression, the best way to stop a bullet with a job, and I really felt like if I was going to make a significant impact on young people's lives, it would need to be some type of, career exploration or workforce development. And so I was at a conference in Daytona, and I happened to come meet the president of the Memphis organization, and they were down there actually recruiting a CEO. I didn't know that at the time. We spent the afternoon, talking about what was going on in Memphis, and he learned about me, and at the end, he invited me to apply. So I came here 2 or 3 times and kind of toured the city and got to know what the organization was like, and it was a much larger organization. It was within the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, they call it a major metro, which there's certain metrics that you have to meet. But the one thing that really interested me was they had built a center. It's called the Juice Plus Technical Training Center that was, a 24,000 square foot facility dedicated solely to workforce development. It's not your typical Boys and Girls Club. It doesn't have pool tables and a gymnasium and all that. It's just workforce development. And so, that immediately got my attention. And the fact that one of our board members is forward enough thinking to realize, that when they built this place that, how important it would be to the city. You had large companies. This is the logistics capital of the world, and you've got, FedEx and all these other companies here, and many of them were considering leaving because they just couldn't fill the need within their workforce. So this was a brilliant idea, and so all I did was, when I got here, was just kind of tweak a few things, expand the number of programs we offered, change kind of the way we were delivering those things, and hit the ground running. And I've been here about 6 years now.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Yeah, I didn't know a club like that existed. So when you said like pool tables and this and that, I'm like, that was my impression, and that's the kind of club that we grew up in. And then we had a computer center, by the way, so it was a great club. It was a pretty big club, but we had a computer center and things like that, but it wasn't structured like in terms of a full program and things like that. Can you talk maybe a little bit more about like the structure of the program and what the participants get, like just what that journey looks like? Because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, we have, around the city, we have 10 other locations, and they are traditional clubs. Some we own, some are in schools. And so when our kids, we start talking about workforce and jobs, and when they're, first graders, and we have speakers come in, doctors, lawyers, police officers, and just talk about careers and how you get there. But when they turn juniors and seniors in high school, if they want, they can transfer over to our technical training center, or you don't have to be a member from before. You can just join directly. So what we do is every member that we have, and most of them are between 16 and 18, but we go up to about 22 now, because we realize that just because somebody turns 18 doesn't mean they're necessarily ready to transition into the workforce. They might not have got their credentials or their certifications yet. So that's another way we're a little bit different from the typical club. But every member that joins, they go through what we call essential skills, or some people call soft skills, but it's basically, how to write a resume, interview techniques, money management. We open a bank account for them. We get them to register to vote. We make sure they have a driver's license. We do mock interviews. We do all of those things before we really even start. And then they have the option to choose from 5 different career tracks. So we have, automotive, welding, IT, culinary arts, and logistics. And they can choose from one of those different areas, and they can, in some cases, they can choose 2 if they want to do them simultaneously. So the center, for example, has a really nice banquet hall. It looks like a hotel room or hotel banquet room. And we have our kitchen is right off of there. So we can cater large events of up to 100 people. We do off-site catering. We have a cater team made up of our kids. So that's just the culinary program. And then we also added a Juice Plus Tower Garden, where we built a greenhouse. We grow all of our own produce in these tower gardens, and then the kids harvest the produce and use it in the culinary program. So that's another addition that we've, added fairly recently. But in all of them, they get some type of certification. Like I said, Memphis is a logistics hub, so all these big companies like Nike and FedEx and others are here. Williams-Sonoma, they all work with us and hire our kids, and they learn, they leave the center with a certificate and learn how to do picking and packing and warehouse management and drive a forklift. And so all those things are taught, at the center.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing and so useful. And then, like when you say like the workforce and big companies needing to fill things and maybe potentially leaving, like based on not being able to fill it. I mean, this is an amazing program that you have set up, and I can see how it works, and it's just win-win. So and great on the corporate side. I mean, everybody wins. The students win, Boys and Girls Club win, the corporate wins, the community wins ultimately. I mean, and just overall, So I mean, that's amazing. So tell me, I want to hear some of those success stories. Like what has been your experience in watching these kids go through this program? Because I know you got a ton of them.
Oh, I do. It has been amazing. And this, we were fortunate enough a couple of years ago to get a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to add one more component, which was internships. So we had a lot of kids that they went through the program and they, perhaps they took automotive or they took culinary, but that might not have been the one area that they were really interested in. And so this provided some funding so that we could hire somebody to coordinate internships. So we placed, for example, 7 students at Methodist Hospital, and they went through a really intense internship right prior to COVID. And we did all these other types of businesses that we really don't have the ability to do at the center. But one of my favorite stories is we had a young lady who had, she had gone through I believe she was in the culinary arts program. She had also done automotive. And, one of my staff had nominated her for an award called Beat the Odds. And I didn't know anything about it. So I asked him, do you mind if I read the application? And maybe I can, pitch in and help some. And so I read it, and I was just astounded at all the obstacles that this young lady had overcome. And so, and yet she was, super positive, has an incredible attitude, really smart. And I'm like, wow, I had no idea. And so I asked if I could talk to her, and we sat down and talked. And I said, what do you really want to do when you graduate? She was getting ready to graduate from high school. She's a cheerleader. And she said, well, my dream was to go into the Air Force and be a pilot, but for medical reasons, I wasn't accepted. But I'd really like to, be an aircraft mechanic. And I went, really? She goes, yeah, that's a dream. And so I have a couple board members from FedEx on my board, and I called one of them, and I told them about her, and they said, well, we'd really love to meet her. And so we set up a meeting, and she went, and they just fell in love with her, and they hired her, and she did an internship there over the summer, and then they're helping her with her school. And if you look at her at the FedEx Instagram page for International Smile Day, they took a picture of her standing up inside of this giant jet engine, with a big smile on her face. And so that's one of my favorites because I really got to know her and play a small part in it. But there's been so many that, it's really been cool. Yeah, I had one more that just briefly. She got a full ride scholarship to Howard University. She got to introduce Wilbur Ross in Washington D.C. at the first, when Trump put together this workforce development board. Our national CEO is on that committee, and he invited us, and I got to bring the young lady with me to D.C. and she got to introduce Wilbur Ross and attend that conference. But she was also Forbes 30 under 30. She just won a $50,000 scholarship, and she was, believe it or not, she was in Paris studying abroad when the pandemic hit. So that got cut short. But just a couple that have really, really stood out to me and have a special place in my heart.
Wow, and you're serving over 5,000 kids a year. So this is a huge operation. Yeah, we were prior to the pandemic. We were serving a little over 5,000 kids a year. Now that's been reduced a little bit because of our capacity, but we never completely shut down. We closed for a couple of weeks, and then we immediately started serving food to all of our kids and delivering them, I think we've served over 70,000 meals last time I counted. But then about a week later, we started opening up our clubs again for, especially for children of essential workers. And so we had to limit our numbers down to about 60 kids per facility, which is about a third of what we normally would do. And then the rest we're doing virtually. And in some ways, it's, everybody's doing virtual stuff now anyway. So we just adapted, and we're even doing the workforce development things, especially the soft skills training virtually, and we've been able to almost triple the number of kids that we're teaching because we're doing it, online. Oh my gosh, that's absolutely amazing. So Keith, that being said, first off, I love this story. Happy to bring it to my audience. It truly is a big success story, and making a big difference in the community. If somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about the Boys and Girls Club in general, or they want to follow up, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably the best way is through our website, and it's simple. It's bgcm.org, and we've got all the links to all of our different programs and our staff there. And in fact, there's a special page for the Technical Training Center. We also are on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we post a lot of videos and photos on there, and also on YouTube. So it's pretty easy to find us. If you just Google Boys and Girls Club of Greater Memphis, we're all over the place.
Fantastic. Well, Keith, really been awesome having you on the show today. Appreciate you coming on and telling more about all the great work you're doing. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, especially if you're a first-time listener. We'd love to have you back. We have some other great guests coming up for you. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, definitely hit the subscribe button there, but also leave us some comments on that video because we'd love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. So let's keep the conversation going over in the YouTube community. And Keith, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been awesome.
Sure. It was my pleasure. Thank you.